I am NetMoverSitan. Are you the blind faith kind of person? Do you need something to put above yourself? Then walk into the meat grinder, as this section is for you. Okay, I was messing with you with that last part. I wanted to set the scene for this last abnormality law section. There are those that have worn painful clothing in the past as penance, such as the hair shirt. They have even whipped themselves, otherwise known as scourging. This first abnormality might be considered excessive, even by those standards. Yeah. Don't believe me? Well, keep playing and you'll find out what I mean. It's the flesh idol. A lump of flesh and iron that will either result in reverent prayer or screaming horror, depending on the individual. Well, it certainly attracts its fair share of Jehovah's Witnesses. It was found in a flooded section. Now, it's a bit unclear if it meant the facility or just the location that it was found, although its fleshy parts moved when an employee prayed to it. But if it's too little prayer, less than 21 seconds, the employee dies, possibly due to their faith found wanting. Although the prayer is painful to the employee, they receive various damage types, although all others were healed physically during a moderate amount of prayer, between 21 to 45 seconds, and were also healed mentally if between 46 to 90 seconds. Unfortunately, if the employee prays for more than 90 seconds, they die due to despair, and the quip-off counter of all abnormalities goes down to 0. When someone says that someone else is a die-hard Christian, who's said to take it literally? I've heard of karoshi, which is working to death, but praying to death? Hard to believe anyone is that fanatical. Then again, there is such thing as an inquisition, and then there's a burning of a town in France, where the burning was preceded by someone saying, "Burn them all, for the Lord will know his own." So it's not that hard to believe after all. Next we have something that, other than a disease, you do not want to catch. The express train to hell. I wouldn't be surprised if Ozzy Osbourne, the Prince of in Darkness himself, was the driver of this one, as it's certainly off the rails. The station clerk is quiet and sells tickets for a train that has no final destination and no clocks alert when the train arrives, just blinking lights. That's because the train is on a circular route. I mean, there are 2 of them right under the city of London. There's also a circular route in Moscow. See the Metro series. I mean, they sheltered down there during World War III in that one. along with Glasgow and a number of other major cities that have underground trains. What's so dangerous about this train, you may ask? Well, the lights turn on every 30 seconds. When one light is lit, the employee that gets the ticket will get a little healing of both body and mind. When 2 lights are lit, the employee that gets the ticket will be healed more. When 3 lights are lit, all the employees in the department that the abnormality is in will get healed. When all 4 lights are hit, all employees get healed. Sounds good, doesn't it? If 30 seconds pass and all 4 lights remain, that's when the the express train to hell will travel through the facility, with the sound of its infernal horn coming out of its endless tunnel and picking up employees, e.g. killing them, that haven't got out of the way of it. Any that it crashes into will be damaged in both body and mind, if it doesn't outright kill them. The lights get reset after that. Yeah, this is one to watch out for. This abnormality, when timed right, can turn the tide of a battle, healing all employees. Unfortunately, it can also backfire spectacularly, especially if the train runs into all the employees at once who are attacking that abnormality. Next we have a strong imbalance, where it can be if not properly managed. Yin and yang. 2 opposing forces, one light, one dark, yet both needing the other to maintain balance. Although both need to be separate, thus they come together to form something dangerous. The 2 pendants contain these forces. Yin, the black pendant, is called the pendant of the devil due to its darkness. This despite its origins in Taoism. Looking at it can bring endless depression. Sounds worse than alcohol. It certainly brings suffering to those near it, bringing upon them an existential crisis, along with to the black pendant itself. It was resentful of this, due to its ability to make people suffer and feel depressed, considering itself an intentional result of the creation of the white pendant. Yeah. Then we have yang, the white pendant. This increases white damage resistance to the wearer and regenerates their mental health. It's known as the pendant of good by employees. It never intended to help others. That's just how it worked, by clarifying their minds and giving warmth to their hearts. Although with concepts such as light and dark, life and death, land and sky, one can't exist without the other. If yang is used by an employee for at least 30 seconds, it increases the risk of a breach of both of them. The same applies to a bad result with yin. Also, if yin is worked on by a wearer of yang, they will automatically fuse. I mean, how bad could this be? Well, let's talk about that, shall we, as It's not good. That's the short version. The longer version is that they take the form of two flying air-breathing carp, one black and one white. When they unite, they become a dragon that destroys. Why does this remind me of something? Not just a video game equivalent of cockfighting? Anyway, everything Yin passes through becomes ruins. Destruction is natural to it, and doesn't hide that. Sensing the white pendant gives it meaning. The truth is that the black pendant and the white pendant are two halves of a larger pendant. Both have great power, and both can have far-reaching consequences if they are united. To be on the safe side, Yang should be worn for only a few seconds and then returned. Next, we have an abnormality that might as well be in the stomach of a cute pink demon. The Blue Star. Any employee foolish enough to work on this, that is below level 4 temperance, will get sucked into it and die. Those that finish this work who are below level 5 prudence will risk it breaching, along with if the work lasts for a minute or more. If it breaches, those with less than level 5 temperance or level 4 prudence die upon encountering it. It will also nullify all sounds except a low-pitched tone, and will hinder sight, and all panicking employees will be sucked into it. It deals white damage, and not to single targets when breaching. While the Lobotomy Corporation encourages programs that promote positivity, it does not encourage conspiracy planning, idolizing, and or worshipping certain abnormalities, likely because that's what provides them power. This is also possibly due to some of them manipulating employees to serving them. Also, mental treatment is needed. Well, considering that it attacks the mind, as it deals white damage, those on the blacklist need to take 3 days worth of the mental treatment and punishment by their department head. Good luck getting that junkie Nejak to do that. This was due to an employee killing herself, one who wasn't compliant with company rules. Those considered mentally unsound are locked up and in strong cases tied to the bed, where those that are affected by this abnormality act with a religious passion and zeal that the Bible Belt in the US is known for. That or during the Middle Ages in Europe, where the Inquisition were big on torture and burning heretics on stakes. Apparently, the Blue Star accepts sinners and can purify sins, calling those that throw themselves into it martyrs. Yeah, might as well tell them to build a sacrificial furnace and throw themselves in it, because that's certainly not off by much compared to this. Yeah. What is it with people sacrificing themselves for... Yeah. No good. Putting rationality and logic into faith and belief. Because those are concepts that don't really go together, do they? A bit like putting cesium in a beaker of water. Next, we have something that is perfect for those who are believers in fate and destiny. Prophecy of the Skin. An ancient-looking religious book on top of a skinny stand. Quite literally, it looks like it was made by the same people who made the Necronomicon from the Evil Dead. It even has human skin as part of it! Employees that open it are enlightened by the truths within, called by the prophets. It raises their prudence up to the maximum level, but at the cost of lower mental damage resistance. It's cumulative, and if they panic at any time while under the effect of this, they're dead. And the death is rather messy, to put it mildly. Although it shouldn't be too bad if the one using this is in the possession of a high white damage protective ego suit. Next, we have something which will be traumatic for some in a certain time of year. Rudolta of the Sleigh. A twisted blend of a fat bearded man in a red suit who does reverse burglaries once a year, one of his flying game animals with a bright red nose, and his sleigh. When breaching, it attacks the minds of those that encounter it. And I can understand why, considering it spreads blood over those it attacks. The sleigh is dragged by it, partly made of Rudolph, whose muscles don't seem to move, except the ones controlling the eyes, with a huge empty hole in his belly. Santa, who is transparent and on top of Rudolph, and is full of organs that are surprisingly still working, and the sleigh, which is child size, with stiff, severed hands as part of the accessories, with the gifts still inside. All were crudely sewn together by one who clearly hated Christmas, much more than Ebenezer Scrooge did, and possibly never saw Santa Claus. What a... As if to say, I'm not having a good time this time of year, so why should everyone else do? Next we have quite a graceful looking abnormality, if not grim. The funeral of dead butterflies. Those with too little justice or too much fortitude risk this one breaching. This abnormality originally transported the dead back to their homes after they retired, also known as getting themselves killed. Unfortunately, they couldn't leave even if they retired. The coffin it carries is the baggage of this mourner. to pay tribute to the employees who have nowhere to go. Small comfort for those that are put into the meat grinder. And no, it's not always the singing machine. The coffin contains butterflies, which get released when the end of the world is perceived. When it breaches, it will attack with white damage in the form of butterflies, which also slows any targets that's caught within them. It breaches when someone works on it when justice is lower than 3, and fortitude is higher than 7, or even if there's a bad result. Yeah, quite specific conditions, aren't there? Which encourages cycling between different agents, so that there's always one working on that. That's the right amount of each of the stats. Oh yes. What else is there? I think that's about it, really. Let's move on to the next one, before I start sounding boring. Of all the abnormalities that have appeared, there is one that is possibly the most dangerous of them all. One so powerful that it destroyed one of the Lobotomy Corporation's rivals, with what some might consider divine wrath. The reason for this was that they were doing something familiar to the UAC from Doom, tapping into hell to generate their power. So in this case, they had it coming. They were playing with hellfire and ended up burned with holy wrath. Although it doesn't explain the initial form encountered. Oh, and it's immune to reset, so any changes that occur will remain. Let's start with its initial form. The one known as the Plague Doctor. A fairly weak abnormality that appears as a medieval apothecary. The kind with the distinctive bird masks full of herbs, that it was believed warded off miasmas. This was due to an understanding of how disease worked, an ancient understanding that in more recent times we know is wrong. In this form, this abnormality is much less powerful than he was when he destroyed the corporation that favoured their infernal power generation machines. Quite literally, in fact. Although to regain his lost power, he needs to bless those that work on him. He has wings instead of arms or legs, and is capable of human speech, although minimally. He came to the facility on his own accord to cure a dreadful disease. Although what this disease was, that's unclear. Although it's unlikely to be either virus or bacterial. The gift it gives, or rather he gives, is guaranteed, and with each gift, his form changes and more closely resembles him at full strength. Something that strengthens those agents, but at a huge cost. He seems quite sympathetic and benevolent, and those that he blesses believe that he is good for them. Yes, belief gives him power. This is what the plague doctor is counting on. When 12 agents are blessed, then the plague doctor reveals his true form, the White Knight, the destroyer of those in league with the devil, who got sent to their unholy master, whom they sought to profit from. Their souls be damned. He resembles a newborn baby, whose words echo throughout the room. My disciples, who I blessed, shalt leave the way of evil that once thou were following, and find me. When the time comes, I shall forgive your sins and descend to the earth thou art living on. Follow my teachings, as I told thee. Thou wilt abandon flesh and be born again. The time has come. The bell will ring. The new world will come. Rise, my servants. Rise and serve me. I am death and life, darkness and light. He does his work mostly through his apostles, those agents that were blessed, some of which can cause instant death to any unfortunate to linger too long near them. Although wait too long, and White Knight will release a wave of pale light that damages the soul, one that can spread to most of the facility, and damage all that he catches with it. The unprotected shall fall to its unavoidable journey. Time is also his friend. He can take control over it away from the manager. There are two ways to defeat him. One is to pummel/shoot him until he falls. And as for taking care of the apostles, that's only a temporary setback, as the wave of pale light, while it damages agents, it heals the apostles and brings them back to life. However, there is another way of suppressing White Knight. And although there's no way to get through this without agents dying, this is a quicker way of dealing with White Knight, although the pummeling/shooting way is the way you get what is probably the most powerful ego weapon and ego suit in the game. It's an abnormality that has been around from day one. One that has no negative consequences besides if the damage is too great. And let's face it, that's only possible if the same agent is sent to deal with it over and over again without healing up in the main room. One sin and hundreds of good deeds. This abnormality silently understands the conflict between good and evil, one that is complex and blurred, although it's rarely violent towards those that work on it. It feeds on evil, specifically that which is confessed to it, although the mechanism is unknown. The greater the sin confessed, the more power is produced. Although sins so grave that they can't be told to anyone, that they'd rather die than communicate this in any way. The power output was so great it overloaded the facility and caused a power outage throughout it, and the employee received 6 years of memory loss. After that, any footage of that experiment that resulted in that event was sealed due to ethics. The specific sin involved that employee and their friends dressing up as animals at a railway near the employee's house. And the costumes weren't very convincing ones. They repeatedly bullied the one dressed as a deer, and they were likely driven into the woods. And after an hour, they looked for them. They found them in some bushes, called out for them, but they were shot 3 times as they sprinted, due to hunters, during deer season, being fooled by a crude costume that they were wearing. Yeah. In Japan, that's something that'll go down about as well as killing cows in India. Likely to provoke moral outrage and possibly an angry mob. Okay, let's get back on topic. They never did that again after that incident. They moved out of town as well, and hunting was banned in the area. A work from this abnormality shall sacrifice the 12th apostle, the Judas, the heretic. In return, fatal amounts of damage are caused to White Knight, although the rewards will not be granted after defeat. If pummeled as the option for suppression, as in a long drawn-out fight until its HP is 0, its ego is unlocked after. But you don't just get it like the apocalypse bird. You have to gather many PE boxes to earn them. One is a very long-ranged and powerful pale damage weapon. The other is a suit of unimaginable protection. There's also a gift that would not look out of place on Sephiroth from Final Fantasy VII. Yes. Great risk in this case definitely leads to great rewards. Finally, we have some theorizing. How did White Knight become so weak after defeating Lobotomy Corporation's rival? There are 1 or 2 ideas regarding that. Lobotomy Corporation's rival generated power by tapping into hell. Those of you familiar with the Doom series will know that's a disaster waiting to happen. And that's likely to be the case. Unlike that game series, they didn't have a one-man army to take care of it, or even to clear up the mess. Instead, you have divine wrath that wipes that facility from the face of the earth. Although, based on the available evidence, it needed so much power that it put a strain on White Knight's abilities. A strain so great that it resulted in him turning into a much weaker form. The form that we know as the Plague Doctor. He needed to regain his power to continue his mission. Who was he before he gained his power? Likely to be an apothecary, based on his getup. One who sought to cure spiritual disease, and was somehow transformed into a form that would help him to achieve that aim. A form that would emulate Jesus Christ along with the 12 disciples. Well, there is a slight resemblance to that, with White Knight being the analogue of Jesus and the 12 apostles being the disciples, with the 12th one being the analogue of Judas. Except it's much darker than it was in the Bible. Well, it must have been quite a fight, and there is a pun there, but I'll resist making that, because it doesn't feel right to me. If you wanted bad puns, you'd either play Undertale or watch pretty much anything involving Chugger Conroy, who is the human equivalent of the maker of bad puns in that game. Well, I need to have some standards, and it's not what you expect from me. Right, what else is there? Well, that's about it, as that's all of the abnormalities. Yeah, that's all. But not all with the lore. I've still got quite a few to get through. Next, I shall be covering the upper layers of the facility. The first few that have abnormalities to work on. Until next time. Hail the rabbit!